Welcome to the 10th Annual Parsons College Wall of Honor dedication ceremony. We're honored to have such a great turnout. You're 120 strong out here, folks. This is wonderful. Thank you. And what an honor to recognize members of our student body who have gone on, chosen profession, community service activities, and other things to make a mark, not only from Fairfield, state of Iowa, our country, and the world, the impact that has come from Parsons College alumni and students. Please join me by rising and standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. At this time, I would like to introduce the mayor of Fairfield, Ed Malloy. He is in a similar situation. He attended a college in northern Maine, and that college has also closed. So he understands where we have been, not having our own place to come back to. Ed Malloy, please join us.
Good morning, everyone. This is really exciting to see the turnout for this event, and it is a special event. Make no mistake about it. Thank you, Dave Neff, for including me in this celebration this morning, and also for reminding me that I was also in a similar situation, a college that was the center of a small rural community in northern Maine, Ricker College, that had been around for nearly 100 years and went through some financial difficulties in the early 70s, and by 1978 was forced to close its doors. Those bonds and relationships that I still have to all of the people that attended and graduated are as strong as what you all have here today. So I'm comforted and reminded that how special those time periods were. We continue to enjoy the present Fairfield. There's really a lot of wonderful things that continue to go on here. One of the things that we're most proud of is that we're sort of beating the trend of what's taking place in rural communities with population loss. Our population has grown since the 2010 census by 9.4%. We're over 10,000 in population for the first time since 1990. At 10,420, and we think that we're doing some things right by making our community attractive for young people and a place where young new entrepreneurs and companies will grow. Those traditional businesses in our community continue to drive the basis of our economy. Our manufacturing group is very, very strong, a lot of expansion there. But we also have some things that we're leading on as well. For instance, Fairfield is the home of 2 solar energy companies, and that is really starting to grow. In Iowa, there's been a focus on renewable energy for some time, and Iowa produces 37% of its power through wind at this time, which is the largest percentage in the nation. But solar is growing as well. So just in Fairfield alone, I think as you drive around, you'll see some large solar arrays. Some are hidden on rooftops that you won't see, but really it goes across the residential, commercial, and manufacturing sector. But by the end of this year, we will have 4 megawatts of distributed solar energy just in our small town. The university is doing one of the large projects. They're doing a 1.1 megawatt field that is going to have battery storage. It'll be the first in Iowa, one of the few in the nation, and that will be researched as well. So we continue to set those kinds of trends. But when we look backwards to the time when Fairfield was also strong, and that was during the heart of the Parsons years, we count those as foundational and very, very important. And the fact that we have this area within this building to commemorate that and commemorate all of the years and the great success that came out of this, your institution, is something that we will always cherish. And two of your award recipients today, John Blackstock and John Braidwood, who I've become friends with over the last 12 years or so, because they come back and help prepare for this event with great enthusiasm, but they also helped us fund and build this building so Parsons would have a proper home. So thank you both very, very much. I know John is down here. Earlier this year in January, and this is something that happens to us periodically, we get surprised by somebody who's used our name in a positive way as a community, but Expedia.com in January decided they were going to announce the 50 best getaways in the country, and there was one per state, and Fairfield was Iowa's designation as a great place to get away. We've done a lot of work in the tourism area. We have a lot of plans and projects going on right now. Everything within the city is working pretty well, and we're very proud of where we are at this point. Just a few weeks ago, we were the host for the traveling Wall of Honor for Vietnam veterans. And this is a monument that is about 1/3 the scale size of the monument in Washington, D.C. It's very impressive, and it travels by truck and is assembled in communities. And there are two communities in Iowa that we're hosting on this particular trip. And that will move from state to state. I don't know whether it gets back here again or not anytime soon. But it was also a time for reflection about that period of time in our history, the Vietnam War. And I know we all share that common time when, as young men and women, we were in the middle of that within this country. And, to see the veterans from the area come and to be a part of that and to reflect about, their contributions at that time was very, very touching. So this final event that you are having to honor your alumni and those great accomplishments is, for me, in that vein. It's a time for us to really, at a high level of appreciation, look back and say, we lived a good life during that period of time, and we are the stewards of that going forward. So again, thank you for coming. Congratulations. I also, again, want to recognize the quiet, behind-the-scenes, work and enthusiasm of my dear friend Dave Neff, who is the consummate Parsons alumni representing all of us here in Fairfield. So Dave, thank you so much for your work again.
10 years ago this weekend, we inducted our inaugural class of 2009. Today with us, we have past inductees to the Wall of Honor. I would like to recognize them at this time. If I could have a little bit of house lights, please. I'm going to read these in the order of induction, and if you'd stand, and then when we finish, you can recognize them accordingly. Class of 2010, Dr. Biff Coomer. Class of 2011, Coach Bob Spencer. Class of 2012, Dr. Kay Ferguson. I was fortunate to be part of the class of 2012 also. Coach Jerry Staten, 2012. 2013, Dr. David Harding, Larry Litwin, and Vera Price Young. Class of 2014, Don Butterbaugh, Dr. Linda Bain Frizzell. 2015, Dean Hunhold, James Neal, Lindsay Shannon, Richard Talon. Class of 2016, Dan Breen, William Berger, James Cornick, Lois Stufflet Johnson, Jeff Stanley, 2016, you almost had half your group show up. That's wonderful. You get an award here. Class of 17, Richard Barton, Sandy Conrad McCullough, and 2017 also David Switzer. So at this time, let's give them a warm thanks for returning. That's 22 names that I read. This represents 30% of those folks who have been inducted over the past 10 years. So over and above, I think it's so neat. We were fortunate to have them all together for a group photo that we will make available to those inductees. We've also been fortunate to have live streaming of this event over the past few years. Thanks to our cameraman who sits up in the middle. Some of you from the 60s might remember the Medical Arts Clinic. Dr. Kirk Strong was the physician that would take care of you on campus. This is his grandson who's come back to Fairfield, and we're very thankful that he's here. We are missing some of our past inductees because of medical or other commitments. And so at this time, for those of you that are out there watching, this is for you. We're going to do a shout out. Class of 2009, Alan Paul from Indiana. 2012, Lee Kane in Des Moines. 15, Ellen Mosier Hansen, a now resident of Florida. 2017, Mike Brewer, Tony DeMacio, and Arnie Rothschild. And one of our inductees that cannot be with us today, Larry Moreno, class of 2018. So all you out there watching, thanks for tuning us in. We also feel fortunate with the folks that have made an effort in order to bring a group back together. And so at this time, all the members of the sharpshooters that showed up. Jeff Mazer, you did a good job of rallying the troops, so all the sharpshooters, let's have you get up, and thank you so much for coming in. You bet. We have representation from Rum and Chowder, WTBA, some Alpha Gams, Phi Sigs, SIGEPs, so we got good representation on there. One of the names that I read before cannot be with us today, Lee Kane. He graduated in 1955, and he has written a book of poems, and I've picked one from that I want to share with you since he could not be with us today. It's called Parsons College Spirit. Here we gather once more, renewing memories from before. The last 50 years really flew. A big warm welcome to each of you. Though our school is officially gone, its lasting memories linger on. Barhite Chapel, Parsons Hall, homecoming dance, the winter ball, freshman beanies in the fall, sororities and our frat. Give us all a tip of the hat. Most important, friendship of a brother to support and encourage one another. Our Parsons training bode us well. We're not afraid to shout and yell. Our bodies reflect an immense pride with school adventures endeared inside. Stop and smell the roses. What an appropriate phrase for all of us in our retirement days. Stop, look, listen. I'm sure you will hear it, that everlasting Parsons spirit. Thank you. From Ellen Mosier Hansen. For me personally, it was very hard to believe I graduated from Parsons 47 years ago. It can't really be that long since we Wild Kittens were just organized into a team composed of two arch rival colleges by Coach Bob Spencer. What an incredible twist of fate. It was even possible to accomplish that challenge and then immediately establish a team that garnered so much instant success. Certainly a tribute to Bob and his staff, as well as those of us who were so intent on working together to become a championship caliber team. Mike Brewer, this past year. I wish to congratulate the committee for their original thinking and their carrying on through 10 years. A special thanks to all the volunteers that have aided to make this a special event. Inducted last year, Tony DeMacio. Congratulations to all of you being inducted, the Parsons Wall of Honor. Special congratulations to my fraternity brother, Larry Moreno, who is unable to attend. I'll be proud to be on the wall with him. Arnie Rothschild. Arnie, if you're watching he runs 20 political campaigns in upstate New York, so it's a busy season for Arnie. We all shared an amazing gift in an amazing moment in time, something that we'll never see again. A college concerned with educating students, some of whom need to learn, like me, and some who only needed a second chance. Parsons was ahead of its time, and we all benefited from that. So those are from some of your inductees that are unable to attend today. Mike Gilpin, thank you very much. I saw him walk in this morning, and I just went with the pre-registered, so thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, let him sneak out. Okay, a 10th outstanding class. Each year, our spring e-newsletter, we open a nomination period and invite alumni to present names of Parsons College graduates and/or students to be considered for the next October Wall of Honor. Our committee reviews and considers these names, and a final consensus is announced in the summer newsletter. Vision for this and this ceremony shared with my co-chair, John Blackstock, class of '64. He's also editor-publisher of the Parsons e-News and announced the idea at a formal dedication of the Alumni Hall in 2008. The recommendation came to form with Parsons College Foundation, John Braidwood, who was announced earlier, and all-class reunion. This was summer of 2003, so this has been an ongoing, we're talking 15 years now. Announcement of the foundation that John has worked to raise funds, as the mayor mentioned, in construction of this facility. Between alumni, faculty, and staff, over $230,000 came from Parsons-related individuals. So a tip of the hat, and thank you to John on that. Nancy Wortinen is here today, president of our Parsons Alumni Association. She brought that recommendation to form a Parsons College Alumni Association at a reunion, and there are currently over 3,800 names, up a good number from last year, and this morning she said you're only 15, I think it was 15 away from a 4,000 mark. So Nancy has gone over and above on that. Ken Rice is here today, and he's the one that manages the development of the Parsons College alumni website. So Ken, thanks for making the trip. Dr. Robert Tree has provided a sounding board for the evolution of the whole process, and be forever indebted to the individuals who've given so generously of their time and talent on this. Please join me. I guess I've asked them, they've been recognized. So thank you to all that have contributed to make this successful program continue. We appreciate it. We have some faculty and staff and some trustees that are here today. And so if those individuals, as I call their name, would please rise, and please wait and we'll recognize them when we finish. Ray Ham, assistant women's basketball coach. I was in the physical education department. Bob Spencer is here as the head women's basketball coach. Biff Coomer, intramural director. Dr. Robert Tree is able to join us today, history and dean of the college, and Vera Price Young, physical education. So if there's any other faculty or staff I've missed, please stand up and we'll recognize you all. Thank you so much. Dr. Bob Fox also, thank you very much. Now this is the moment that you travel the distance that you've been waiting for. The annual induction of the Parsons College Wall of Honor. Some folks have asked, how are we going to proceed? I'll share that with you in case I didn't get to visit with you. I will call the presenter to the podium, and after brief remarks, the honoree will then be asked to come to the podium also. They will then be presented a personal plaque. We will step to this side of the podium, and a photo will be taken. So we'll have smiles, and we'll have your photo on the screen behind us on that. So just be patient with us. We'll ask the presenter, once they're finished, to have a seat with us, so they will be included in that photo of the inductee on that. Some of our honorees are not able to be here, and so they will be represented by family, or in this case, a fraternity brother. Jim Cornick will sit in for Larry Moreno. Top of the alphabet. Shall we start with Cindy Thompson Albers, 1971 graduate. Our first honoree came to Fairfield as part of the women's athletic program from John F. Kennedy College, Wahoo, Nebraska. Here is class of 2017 inductee Sandy Conrad McCullough to introduce Cindy Thompson Albers. Sandy, if you would come forward, please.
Good morning. It's always great to be back in Fairfield. I've always said that, even though I spent 2 years here, there's a very special place in my heart for Fairfield and for the Parsons family and friends. It's just great to be back with all my friends again after so many years. Sometimes I think about it and I think, you know, it just seems like that was yesterday I was here, and then I think, oh, it's a million years ago. But anyway, I would like to thank you guys, John, Dave, the committee, for all the work you've done in these past, well, 10, 15 years, because this, as we know, was a lot of work. I met Cindy my freshman year at JFK, 1968. The following year, we became roommates, and she still reminds me that as a roommate, I had a tendency to move our furniture around. And I wouldn't do it during the day. If Cindy would go out, then I thought, well, now's my time to move the furniture around. Now, you would think, with the size of our rooms at JFK, that I wouldn't be able to find a way to change them, but I did, many times. And she would come back in the middle, not the middle of the night, but it was dark, and she couldn't even find the bed, because she never knew for sure where it was going to be, which I believe we had bunk beds, and I pushed them to the other side. Also, we were talking last night about, she was, well, I guess you could say, I dyed my hair several times, and one time it was pretty bad, and I wouldn't go to class, and I said to Cindy, I'm not going to class till you go, but I've got to get some different hair dye. So, you know, she goes, I said, remember the time? And she goes, the time? I think it was several times I had to do that. While we were at JFK and Parsons, Cindy, I don't know if she will tell you this or not, but she played in 3 Women's Softball World Series, earning All-American honors, and was named to the All-American team twice. In addition, she was our athletic trainer at Parsons for the basketball team, and was the camp counselor for Coach Spencer in the summer. So she transferred with us in 1970 to Parsons, along with the other members of the basketball team and fellow students. Even though Cindy is retired from teaching and coaching, she continues to run the clock for football games, basketball, volleyball games in the Decorah Community School District, having done this for 46 years. She also keeps the books for basketball, volleyball, and works many middle school and high school track meets. She is married to Mark Albers. They have 3 children. Amy is a physical therapist. Brad is a pediatric anesthesiologist. And just a side note here, Brad went to Luther College at the same time our youngest son, Chris, was at Central, and they played football against each other. So our paths crossed several times when they were playing football. Justin is the middle school principal at Decorah. They have 4 grandchildren. So I am proud and honored at this time to present Cindy Thompson Albers to the Parsons College Wall of Honor.
Thank you. Whew, I'm really nervous, you guys. So here it goes. Thank you, Sandy, for nominating me and for your introduction. You've been a great roommate, teammate, and friend, and she was also a bridesmaid. Also, thank you to my husband, Mark, and my brother, Doug, for helping me celebrate this honor today and for all your support over the years. Thanks to my friends, teammates, and coaches and 6 sisters that are also here today. And lastly, thank you to my children, Amy, Brad, and Justin, and their spouses as they are going to watch the live stream since they could not attend. Thanks for sharing this day with me. 51 years ago, I stood on the softball field at Hubbard, Iowa, crying. It was my final softball season as a high school player, and we had just lost in the state finals. My mom came up to me and says, "Cynthia, don't cry. Second place isn't that bad." I go, "Mom, I'm not crying because we lost. I'm crying because I'll never play softball again." Little did I know, a few months later, I would meet Coach Bob Spencer, and he would recruit me to come to John F. Kennedy College, where I would have the opportunity to play both basketball and softball while continuing my studies to become a teacher. If it weren't for Coach Spencer, the direction of my college career would have been quite different, and I wouldn't be standing here today for this honor. At that time, not many colleges had women's sports, so the opportunity to play was exciting and very rewarding. Getting to play basketball and winning the national championship was a great experience. Then to say I played in the College World Series is one thing, but to say you played in the first three, winning the first two, was an unforgettable memory. While going to JFK and Parsons, I had the opportunity to work at Coach Spencer's basketball camps. The opportunity gave me a different perspective. Rather than being a player, I was making players through teaching and coaching, and I felt this is very instrumental in me wanting to coach when I graduated. Then just before my senior year, Coach and Pat Spencer, Coach Ray Ham, Mrs. Patrick, as well as a number of us gals, came for a visit to Parsons before starting school in the fall. The warm and friendly welcome from the people we met and the facilities we saw on the tour made it very easy to enjoy the excitement of a new campus and the new experiences to come. I have a few memories I'd like to share from my year at Parsons. My first memory is of Ethan Town. He was in charge of the bookstore, and he had a few of us girls help out pulling books when the students came with their class lists. Being new to Parsons, it really made us feel a trainer rather than playing basketball. I readily accepted his proposal and saw it as an opportunity to be a part of the team without all the running. Thanks, Coach, for being a Parsons alumni and bringing us here to be a part of a special time in women's athletics and a special time in my life. Thank you so much. So, with that change, I was soon under the guidance of the athletic trainer known as Pinky. He took me through the ins and outs of taping and then through the Kramer athletic training course. I passed with flying colors and soon was taping away. He also taught me the terms high-low, jick-jack game. Luckily, I still remember how to tape, but the card game of pitch escapes me. Thank you, Pinky, as what you taught me helped me to be a better coach to help my athletes. Another memory I have was the physical education staff, Dr. and Mrs. Burris, Mrs. Young, and Mrs. Patrick. They walked the talk. One could see, hear, and feel their enthusiasm, knowledge, and passions for physical education. Their influence impacted my teaching and my love of teaching for 42 years. Thank you so much for being there to help my dream of being a physical educator come true. So when the younger teachers in our school tried to encourage us older teachers to retire, they said, "Take early retirement because you can do what you always wanted to do." And my response was always the same: I am doing what I always wanted to do. During my 42 years in education, 39 at Core, I worked in many capacities with student teachers, J-term observers, and taught and coached middle school and high school students and athletes to help them achieve their potential, and to see them succeed was very rewarding. I have now been retired going on 5 years and keep busy golfing, visiting our grandchildren, watching TV, reading, and for the past 27 years serving on the Park Rec Board. My love of sports is just as strong now as it was when I played and coached. So running the clock for the football, volleyball, and basketball games, doing the scorebook, or clerking track meets, and reffing middle school volleyball has kept me involved. If asked if I have any regrets about Parsons, I would have to say I had one, and that is that I didn't get to have the opportunity to attend all 4 years, which is why I thank the committee for selecting me to be on the Wall of Honor along with these other deserving individuals, and thank you for keeping the memories and spirit of Parsons alive. Thank you.
William Bill Atkins, class of '66. The Chicago Bulls signed Bill right out of Parsons College, and he played for 2 seasons with the Bulls. Here is Ken Rice, Wildcat basketball teammate, to introduce Bill Atkins.
I would like to thank these gentlemen behind me here for their hard work, and I think they deserve congratulations for what has been accomplished. I work with young students every day, and one of the things that I teach them, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. And the last 53 years for me has been a straight line, a very short straight line. But I always enjoy coming back to this when I get the opportunity. My teammate, Bill Atkins, I had the privilege of playing with him for 2 years. Both of us grew up in Indiana and have a similar background. One of the things in Indiana that you do all summer long, the most important thing we do is play basketball. Bill and I have a similar opportunity to come out here and play for Parsons College, both of us having been out of high school a couple years before we had that chance to come. The opportunity that it gave both of us has been remarkable. Bill, having gone to Indiana University when he came out of high school, left there, went to Western New Mexico in Silver City, involved in an accident, was out a year and a half, and came out here to visit a friend. Was in a pickup game, which many of us did here, and Bill was seen by a fellow fraternity brother, Teak, who got a hold of O.B. Nelson, and the rest is history. Bill is the all-time leading scorer at Parsons College in basketball. The difference between Bill and I, coming from Indiana, he could jump above the rim. I could barely touch the rim. There is a story that went around for a long time that Bill, one night outside the Teak house, jumped over a car. And that has been verified. He actually did that. Someone at one time even wanted to get a shirt and put a big S on the front of it. Not many people could jump that high. It is my privilege and my honor to introduce Bill Atkins, my fellow teammate and longtime friend. And even though it's been 53 years, we still stay in contact. Bill?
Well, listening to Kenny there, it was kind of makes me a little better than I was, I think. But I appreciate what he did for me. And we like to think the committee has done tremendous work to keep Parsons College, our university, is still recognized. And I'd like to thank a couple of my Teak brothers, Phil Como, Ellen Paul, who had a conspiracy against me not to let me find out they had nominated me. And my wife was part of that conspiracy too, Carol. So anyway, when Dave called, I said, when he was talking to me, I said, what the heck's he calling me for? And he says, you have been accepted. And I was very emotional. I'm telling you, I was really surprised. But everything came out just fine, and I'd like to tell you how I got to Parsons College. One day, a bunch of friends, I was injured in a car accident, and I didn't play much basketball for about over a year. And it came around, and I started playing basketball again. We were playing basketball one day, and we got done, and we went to this restaurant to have a beer and get a sandwich, and a friend of mine says, why don't we go see Terry? Terry was a friend of mine that was at Parsons College. So I said, fine, let's go. So my brother, I went home, we packed a bag. My brother took us out to Route 80, which is pretty new then, and dropped us off. We hitchhiked out here. And I don't remember the first person that picked us up, but the second person was a person delivering a school bus. And me and Frank sat on the school bus for almost, I can't remember, it was almost to Iowa. Well, then he dropped us off because he was going, I don't know where he's going, but we had to get out. So about an hour later, a car, I'll never forget, it was a convertible Studebaker Lark. It comes blowing by us. All of a sudden, we hear, "Eek!" And they stopped about 50 yards in front of us. We go up, we had our suitcase, we grabbed them, we're running up to it, and it was a woman and her daughter. We didn't know at the time, but we threw our suitcases in the back, jumped over the car, and got down there. Man, she takes off. Man, we're running. Our hair's blowing. We're stuck down in that seat. And her daughter turns around and says, "Where are you guys going?" We said, "We're going to Fairfield, Iowa." And believe it or not, she says, "That's where we're going." And this woman was taking her daughter around to a couple colleges to see which one she would really like. And that's how I ended up there. Talk about, and let's see, let me get here, Parsons, okay. Then I was just going to tell you what Parsons meant to me. Number one, it gave me a chance to continue my education and earn a degree. Number two, to play basketball again. And number three, to meet my wife, Carol. And it meant more to me than anything at that time, because that's where your life is really starting to take off during and after, right after college. And then I would like to talk about a couple of games I played in. Miss O.B. Nelson, he was like a Damon Runyon type character. He was a great guy. But I just want to tell you, there's two stories I can't tell you that I'd love to. During the game, too, when he was kicked out, and well, he wasn't exactly polite to the referees. And one time in another game, he got so excited. I didn't see this, but he picked his legs up and he flipped over on the floor, went over on his head and landed on his back. That's true, too. And then the other thing he did, I didn't want to say, is about called the referee. And one time we were playing a school, and now these aren't the exact times, but I'm just going to say we were ahead by 2 points or 3 points, and there was like 50 seconds left in the game. And Fred Hunt was sort of like our team manager. He made sure we had the basketballs when we went on trip and things like that. And all of a sudden, he's running out on the court. Now, they've already been playing for about 30 seconds, and he's yelling at the clock. The clock didn't move. So everybody's out. They're trying to figure out. OB walks over, because I was standing there. OB walks over to the guy at the clock. He says, "Don't worry about it. When you come to our gym, we'll just add 50 seconds to the game." And then, I'll tell you what, the other time was that we got home from a basketball trip. And Carol and I lived across the street from OB, and we got home about, I think it was by 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock in the morning. So he says, "Bill, I'll drop you off." I says, "Okay." So we're going down Route 1, and he goes right by our houses, where I was living and where his house is. And we ended up in some town south of here. I don't know, I can't remember what town it was. Anyway, we go into this bar. It's out in the country. And I remember the ceiling was like 11 foot high. And there was guys in there playing poker, and there were bib overhauls. This is one of the bars with the plants hanging in the window and things like that, So I didn't have anything to do, and OB's over there. He's drinking a beer, so I went up to the bar, because I didn't have a place to sit, and the bartender says, "You want a beer?" And I said, "Okay." Well, I had a few beers. So I got home about 4 o'clock. So, and we had practice the next morning at 9. So I go to practice. We're warming up, and OB, he's Atkins, get over here. So I go over there, and he says, "You'd like to have a beer, huh?" Well, I says, "Yeah, I had a beer." He says, "I want to see you do 5 gorillas." Now, a guerrilla was constituted of running up to the free throw line, back to the baseline, half court, baseline, free throw line, back court, court. So he made me run 5 of those. And when he got done, he says, "How'd that beer taste?" And I said, "Not so good now, Coach." So anyway, but if it wasn't for OB, I would not be here. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming and keeping up with Parsons.
Now, you might think we have a conspiracy that this is really Augusta, Georgia, but no, this is Parsons Kelly Green. Our next, John Braidwood, 1968. He also has Kelly Green on his coat, but also pumping Kelly Green and white through his veins since 1968. John's been a major fundraiser for the Arts and Convention Center. Here is Clint Braidwood to present his father.
Wow. Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Mr. Blackstock, Mr. Neff, for putting on such a wonderful event. It is such an honor for me to be here. My name is Clint Braidwood, and I have the great honor of presenting my father, John Braidwood, to the Wall of Honor. Where are you, Dad? There you are. From my earliest memories in life, I remember my dad talking about Parsons College. What a great school it was, and what a terrific experience he had while attending. It was a life-lasting experience for him. I never visited Parsons or Fairfield, Iowa until this weekend. I have been able to walk through Carnegie Museum and tour the eclectic downtown eateries and shops, and I see now why he fell in love with this wonderful town. My father was a born salesman and promoter. If ever there was an opening for a town crier, he would be the one. He was and is a star. Dad made his mark with 3M Company in their sales division and later in the banking industry, where he excelled as a specialist in the investment and trust departments. In addition to a successful business career, he has quietly impacted the lives of others and given back for the last 35 plus years. You see, Dad, unbeknownst to most, became involved in the Big Brothers Big Sisters programs years ago. He had dedicated himself to becoming a positive role model for many needy and disadvantaged youth. Even today, out of his home in Queensbury, New York, Dad meets with a young man named Austin. He brings Austin to family and social events and shows him a different part of the American experience that he otherwise would never get to see. My father lives by the saying of Winston Churchill that we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. Dad, your generosity and selflessness lives in me. But I tell you, next to his desire to giving back, his love for his family, Dad's love, commitment, and dedication to Parsons College is second to none. Many in this room know my father, but for those of you who do not, he has a true knack for striking up a conversation with just about anyone. It's true, he has a sincere interest in people. Well, usually his first question when you meet him is, "Where are you from?" Now, God forbid if anyone mentions Iowa, or any Midwestern state for that matter, they are sure to get a full education on the history of Parsons College, the progressive nature of the school, and if they're real lucky, his beloved Rub and Chowder Association. He truly is your town crier for this unbelievable college institution. Parsons alumni, I am so lucky to have a father like John Braidwood and to be the recipient of the life lessons he has taught me. I know many of these lessons were nourished right here in the rolling cornfields of Iowa, and I have no doubt that I have Parsons College also to thank. Parsons alumni, you are so lucky to have a man like John Braidwood representing you and this beautiful college you all hold so dear. I thank you very much for recognizing his passion, which is Parsons College. It is my true honor to introduce my dad, John Braidwood, Parsons College, class of 1968.
You see why I love this man so much, this young man? Thank you, Clint. First of all, let me say, too, that I want each one of you to know that This is such a pleasure and a privilege and an honor to be with you this morning. So, it's 1964. I have just finished my freshman year at college. And my father said to me, "You know, John, you have done such an amazing job of convincing the University of New Mexico that they never, ever want to see you again." And he said, "I see two options for you: the prospect of Vietnam or the opportunity to experience the heartland of this country." It didn't take long to figure that one out. And so it was to be. Parsons College would be in my immediate future. A die-hard Easterner raised in upstate New York, I couldn't imagine, and believe me, I had absolutely no idea just how much this experience was going to mold me in ways that I would never, ever have imagined. First, the Parsons College plan. My amazing and outstanding professors, my social life with the Rum and Chowder Gentlemen's Society, and my nighttime employment at the Dream Hotel. Boy, do I have some stories to tell that I can't tell. The Dream Hotel at 4724161. Hello, operator. This is a Dream Hotel at 4724161. I have a party unit 44 that I'd like to place along to this phone call. Do you know how many times I said that in 3 years? Telephone number etched in my brain forever. One day, soon after arriving, and that would actually be some 50 years ago, I was having breakfast in a local diner, and I saw something I had never, ever seen before. 4 residents saying grace before breakfast. That moment was a window for me as to what a unique and special culture I was about to enter into. I tell everybody to listen to me. Not only did I have one of the most progressive academic experiences, but I would later realize that not only was I earning a degree in psychology, but in fact, I was earning a degree in humanity. I saw firsthand how the people of this heartland contribute to the consciousness of this country. Hardworking, charitable, sincere, honest, God-fearing, all the attributes that make this country so great. So yes, Parsons College and the citizens of Fairfield dramatically opened my eyes, honed my values, and provided me the human skills to go forward in life, to be a better husband, father, provider, and a contributor to society. I'm often reminded of the Big Brothers Big Sisters slogan, "Give a little, get a lot." I've tried, like many of you, to give it back to my fellow man as much as possible. This has been such an extremely rewarding experience. So thank you, Fairfield, Iowa. Thank you, Parsons College. I am and I will be forever grateful.
This is a Fairfield hometown boy that grew up here and went on to make a great impact in his life. George Estel, class of '73, has lived life to the fullest in Iowa by helping so many other members of our society who need an advocate to be on their side. Presenting George Estel today is class of 2016 inductee Jim Cornick.
Good morning. I currently serve with George Jessel on the Iowa Mental Health Planning and Advisory Council. We were years apart at Parsons. I did not know him as a student, though through his late brother, John, who was a high school classmate, I learned of George's advocacy for mentally ill children. I made contact, and we developed a friendship. It was after the fact that we had an opening on the council, and I asked George if he would become a board member on the Iowa Council. And he said yes and agreed. And after 2 or 3 meetings, I learned that he was a Parsons College graduate. And so it's with great pleasure I introduced George Jessel for the Parsons College Wall of Honor. Today we will honor a distinguished graduate whose leadership, passion, and commitment has impacted thousands and thousands of children struggling with mental illness, health, and behavioral issues in Iowa and throughout the Midwest. In 1982, at the young age of 33, he was appointed CEO of Tanager Place, headquartered in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. In explanation, a tanager is a brilliant red and black songbird that spends most of its time soaring high in the canopy of forests. During the course of his 35 years of leadership, Tanager Place has soared to great heights, from serving 500 children a year to more than 5,000 children and families yearly. When the new Tanager Place Medical Building was built, it was appropriately named Estill Center. Inside the Estill Center, a plaque reads, "Over the course of 35 years, his visionary leadership, integrity, and unyielding advocacy for children and families was the driving force behind the growth and development of the organization. He transformed Tanager Place into a pioneer leader of children's services and mental health treatment. His mission-driven tenacity often led the fight to improve services for the children of Tanager Place and the state of Iowa. His passion and commitment has impacted the lives of thousands of children. George is an entrepreneurial giant in the field of nonprofit organizations. As CEO, he oversaw multiple million-dollar budgets and led over 230 employees. Throughout his career, he has been driven by what he believes in the best interests of children and their families. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to present George Jessel to the 2018 Parsons College Wall of Honor.
First, let me say how grateful I am for this recognition. It's an honor to have my accomplishments deemed worthy of this award by fellow Parsons grads, and congratulations to all of you on this wonderful event. And I should thank my older brother John, my big brother John, who was always my big brother, who still is, who talked about me and my accomplishments and led to today. I came to Parsons College, frankly, by way of my mother. She attended Parsons College in the early 1930s. She received a teacher's certificate, and she taught in a one-room schoolhouse. She was a great believer in education. As a child, I knew oftentimes when I wanted a new toy, the answer might be no. But if I asked for a book, the answer was always yes. In fact, I don't know how many remember this, but Time Life used to publish books every year that you could buy through the mail. And my mother could never say no to those. So I think I probably read every Time Life publication published during my childhood. Unfortunately, I lost my mother when I was 16. But I knew that she was determined that I attend college. She made it very clear to me. So at 16, I knew what I had to do. Parsons College gave me the opportunity to fulfill that wish. I came to Parsons, a typical product of American K-12 education. At Parsons, I found an accomplished faculty that opened my eyes to a different kind of learning. This was education based on curiosity, questioning, and healthy skepticism. I loved it. I took to it like a fish to water. My favorite classes are anthropology and social work, which led to my career choice. While I was at Parsons, I had a work-study job to help me pay tuition. And I worked in the mailroom. And there was a woman there, and I believe her name was Pearl, if my memory is correct. And she supervised the mailroom, and allowing me to work there every day was how I paid for tuition. And during that time, I sorted, I delivered, and I picked up mail twice a day, in the morning and in the afternoon. And in that process, I began to understand that Parsons College really was a community. It was an interconnected system. And that was a concept that stuck with me throughout my career, how everything in our world, everything in our life is interconnected. I also had wonderful experiences with fellow students. I was a part of the karate club, and during that time, I learned about discipline and willpower. To be fair, to be completely honest, I also learned a little bit about willpower after a few nights of drinking with friends, followed by an early morning class. Unfortunately, that was a lesson that didn't quite stick. I had to learn it over and over again. And still working on it. But these crucial skills, these things that I learned at Parsons College, they served me throughout my career. The Parsons College Wall of Honor, announced 10 years ago by John Blackstock and Dave Neff, is a wonderful way to maintain the spirit of Parsons College and serve as a constant reminder of the countless individuals and communities impacted by the college. I am indeed privileged to be included in this group, and in conclusion, I'd like to say, Mom, this is for you.
Robert E. Fox, class of 1966. Robert has been involved in college administrative teams since his graduation from Parsons in 1966. Many students have benefited from his focus and personal interest in their education. Presenting Robert Fox is his wife, Sandy Fox.
It's my privilege this morning to introduce my husband. I did not attend Parsons College, but I knew Robert while he was here, and he'd often put me to work in the office. In my life, I've often claimed the verse from Jeremiah, chapter 29, verse 11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future." And that verse could be claimed by Robert, too. He came to Parsons as his last chance, but Parsons became his springboard. He had a goal. He wanted to be Dean of Students of Parsons College. Well, he worked in the residence halls in different positions. He was on the Supreme Court for the college, and he became Dean of Men, and then he became Dean of Women, and then he became Dean of Students. And that springboard took him through Minnesota, Metropolitan Community College, California, Laney College, and Fresno City College, and through that process, he demonstrated his heart and his passion for student success. When I was thinking about what I needed to say, I thought about how we wait till someone dies before we say something nice. So I'm glad I get to say something nice today. But I used my family to help me come up with words that they felt described Robert. And it's interesting, I think, that their words represent his commitment to family, but also his commitment to students. Selfless, wise, helpful, guide, contemplative, considerate, cerebral, powerful, astounding, advocate, diplomatic, lovable, bemusing, wise, and supportive. My husband, Robert Fox, class of '66.
Good morning. And thank you, Cindy. Thank you very much. It's difficult for me to adequately express how thankful I am to have been included in the 2018 class of Parsons College Wall of Honor recipients. I know full well that there are many others more worthy of this award than I. Therefore, I accept it with great humility and gratitude. I am also thankful for the dedication and the inspired efforts of those who made this celebration and the commemoration of our dear alma mater possible. I arrived, like many others, in Fairfield one cold, dark night in February 1965, full of fear and with abysmally low GPA. With no expectations of financial support from my family, I had no idea how I was going to afford to pay for my education, beyond the money I had saved and tucked somewhere in my BBDs. Somehow it was as though the Parsons plan had been created just for me. Academic performance was always a paramount concern of mine. As a result, it took some time before I stopped thinking that a request for a visit to my advisor, Tiv Young or Steve Case, would result in me being notified that an error had been made in my admissions to the college and that I was to be summarily dismissed and sent home. By the time I graduated in 1966, I decided that I intended to spend my career at Parsons College and applied for a position as an admissions counselor. As fate would have it, I didn't get the position. But several days later, I received a telephone call from a man many of you know, John Adcock, Big John, who told me that I was to get over to his office immediately and he had a plan for me. And I was therefore hired to work in the dean's office. It didn't take long for me to decide that my ultimate career goal was to become dean of students at Parsons College, a goal I attained before I left the college in 1972. Along the way, I was assisted by staff at every level. I'm particularly grateful to Dr. Cornell Clark, Dr. Hadley, who told me, Fox, you need to get a master's degree. You can't be dean of students until you get one. Get out of here in the summer and do it. And Dean Adcock, whose heart was as big as his hands. And Ralph Smith, who I used to ride around the campus with at night when I was the president of Parsons College. I informed Ralph that I was being required to go to graduate school. And without a hesitation, he said, I know you don't have any money. Meet me down at the First Bank, National Bank, on Monday, and we'll take out a loan. I'll co-sign for you. Amazing. And Mary Jo Hine, my 18-year-old secretary. All of them taught me invaluable lessons that weren't taught in graduate school. I would like to dedicate this award to two women who were most instrumental in my success. First is Nancy Hendren Kirby, a Parsons College student who wrote me a letter in 1963 and encouraged me to consider attending Parsons College. Ironically, we had never met before. I didn't know anything. It just came out of the blue, a letter from her. And I discovered that she also lived in Indianapolis. She lived on Meridian Street in the same block as the governor's mansion, and I lived several streets over from the Monon Merrill Road in the inner city near a bread factory. Several years later, I applied and was admitted to Parsons College. Although Nancy attended sporadically during my tenure as a student. I had the pleasure of attending several classes with her, such as Dr. Eastman's Sex and the Family and Humanities 450, which is AKA world literature from a fire hose. We remained great friends until her death several years ago. The other woman is my dear wife, Sandy Keith Fox. We met when I was a graduate student at UNI. Sandy often arranged her class schedule so that she could help me in my office. She has been there for me at every stage of both my military and educational career, and she still reminds me that I used to pay students to dance with her in old Club 21. And in doing so, she has been my greatest supporter and most precise critic. But most of all, I'm thankful for the 6 children we have been blessed with. In closing, I'd like to express my appreciation again to the committee for their hard work over the years, and congratulations to the recipients, past and present, and my heartfelt appreciation to all of you who are here with us to celebrate this event. Be assured that I am continue to be most humble and proud to have attended and graduated from Parsons College and to receive this extraordinary recognition. And just as an aside, when people ask me where I attended college, I say I attended Parsons College, which is in Fairfield, Iowa. You should have heard of it. It was the largest undergraduate college in the United States at that time. But as I say that, I'm reminded of an admonition I received from a beautiful sister-in-law who's now deceased. While doing the dishes together, she apparently thought I wasn't doing my share of the work. And after slamming her towel on the counter, she said, "You may be Dean Fox at that big college, but here you're just Robert, Dad, or hey you. You still have to help with the dishes, take out the trash, and you can only get one dessert." And with that, I say that to say that I am sincerely grateful for this recognition. But when I go home to California with my grandchildren, I'm still Grandpa. Thank you.
Tom Grooms, class of 1960. Industrial relations attorney representing one of the most respected agricultural equipment companies in the world. Here to introduce Tom is his wife, Zilpha.
In my introduction, I will show you how undaunted Tom was, no matter the circumstance. In the summer following high school graduation, Tom worked in construction. He was injured in a work accident when the scaffold in which he was standing and installing brass letters on the facade of a remodeled building front collapsed. He suffered fractured vertebrae in his lower back and was required to wear a back brace for 1 year. Parsons had awarded Tom an athletic scholarship for basketball. He wore the back brace to class under his clothing and removed it before attending basketball practice, which was not a good idea. He couldn't attend college without the athletic scholarship. Several weeks into school, Tom was injured in basketball practice. In securing a rebound, he pulled Vern Holling's elbow into his face, resulting in 5 teeth being knocked out or broken at the gum. The teeth were removed in the dentist's office, and he had 22 stitches in his mouth. Soon, infection became apparent, and he had to be hospitalized. His upper teeth were removed, and he was released from the hospital in 3 days. Tom returned to his dorm room with a hot plate and a box of canned soup and fruit juice selections. For the rest of the semester and well into the second semester, Tom ate in his dorm room. He applied for an academic scholarship, and Parsons converted his athletic scholarship to an academic scholarship, and Tom continued his janitor's job for his dorm room. We began dating in the first weeks of college, so I remember well this freshman year. When I first saw him after this accident, he had 2 black eyes, a swollen nose, and no teeth. I loved him anyway. Typical of Tom, I was later to learn, he continued on the course he had started and had a good 4-year college experience. You can see the information that Bob Solheim wrote. Tom was very active in dramatics. He was in several plays and the religious life of the campus. He was on the chapel board and very active in Tau Kappa Epsilon fraternity. In his senior year, he took the law school admissions test and applied to only one law school, the College of William and Mary Marshall Wythe School of Law in Williamsburg, Virginia. When driving for President Roberts, having some free time in Washington, D.C., Tom took a bus to Williamsburg to visit the law school. While there, he asked the dean's secretary the address of the superintendent of schools. He went to that office without an appointment and asked to speak with the superintendent. After a brief wait, he was ushered into his office. Tom told him he would be applying to go to the Marshall Wythe Law School in the fall. Tom asked for a job for me and convinced the superintendent to hire me. Well, the superintendent said, if she is as talented as you describe, I imagine we will find a job for her. And when I later applied, I was hired. My starting salary was $3,800 a year, less than half of the out-of-state tuition for law school. After the school year started, I got a call from the superintendent's office concerning my salary. I thought maybe I was getting a raise. Instead, my salary was lowered to $3,600. The board thought, according to my transcript, I had a master's degree because of the number of advanced courses Parsons College had offered and I had taken. This part I added only to remind us that's what Parsons College was like in our time. Tom applied for a job as a National Park Ranger in the Colonial National Park, and I applied for a second job as a costume hostess with Colonial Williamsburg. That's how we got by. After graduation, we returned to the Midwest, and Tom began to work for Deere & Company, and I began teaching at the local high school, and we began our family. 2 of them are here today, our son Tom and his wife Jillian, and our daughter Heather. We have another son and a son-in-law, a son Hayden, who was unable to attend. Those 3 have produced 7 grandchildren. Whether living in Argentina during the tumultuous years of a civil war or traveling to foreign countries and finding his way in strange languages and communities, Tom was undaunted, not one to give up. His education at Parsons College prepared him well to compete in law school among graduates from prestigious Eastern universities like Harvard and Yale. The administration and faculty at Parsons were extremely supportive. Tom made lasting friendships with both members of the administration and faculty at Parsons, which I know he will comment upon. And now I present to you the undaunted Tom Grooms.
I'm honored and humbled to be standing here before you as an inductee into the Parsons College Wall of Fame. It's truly an honor and a pleasure. I had a great job and a career with Deere & Company, traveling everywhere, but I'd really rather talk about what made it possible, which started here at Parsons College. I had a grand experience during my 4 years. The very first day, I met the lady who would be my wife. I met Zuffa the first night at a mixer dance in Turner Gym. We were told boys were to line up on the south side of the gym, girls to line up on the north side, and when the music began, the men were to walk across the gym directly and ask the girl to dance. I took off catty-cornered at an angle to Zilpha. And I asked her to dance. Just as we began to dance, Mr. Greenaw, who was the director of the student activities and looked like a student, said, "Hey, you can't do that." And I asked him, was Zilpha his girlfriend? He said, "No." I said, "Then what difference does it make to you?" And we danced all night. I want to talk a little bit about the many people who were helpful to me. The townspeople in Fairfield, the professors were grand, and the Parsons College staff and administration were outstanding. And I'd like to talk about that. For example, one awful winter night, I double dated to a college dance with a professor of English and short stories, Professor Westerfield, Hargus Westerfield, and his wife, because I had a car and they didn't. When Professor Mrs. Hinkhouse, whom I never had a course with, learned I was going to be attending William & Mary Law School, she gave me a letter of introduction to her nephew, who was a professor of art at William & Mary. In my second year of law school, driving and working as a national park ranger, one night I got a telephone call at our residence. He said that a Miss Watts was on the parkway and looking for our apartment, Professor Watts. So I said, "Well, tell her to stay where she is and I'll come get her." So I drove out to get her, brought her home, and we had a marvelous evening together and talking about old times at Parsons College. And Professor Reverend Robertson, who taught religion, had sent a letter of introduction to the Presbyterian Church in Williamsburg, talking about a young couple that had just got married from Parsons and how they would be in Williamsburg and to welcome them into the Presbyterian Church. I didn't know that at the time. I later learned that. The people in the town of Fairfield were also kind to me. There was a young Fairfield lawyer, still here in Fairfield, Mr. Gary Cameron. He was at that time also the Secretary of State of Iowa. He employed me to duplicate a picture of Moses McCoy that yet today hangs in the library at the courthouse. He had wanted to buy that, and the Bar Association wouldn't sell it. So he had asked the art teacher if anyone could reproduce that, and she put me in touch with me. What I will remember always is how generous he was in paying me for that work. Also, the owner of Martin Drug bought 8 of my paintings and displayed 6 of them in the drugstore, the other 2 in their home. In my early years, or early weeks, of law school, I learned to my great relief that I was well prepared for law school. As my wife said, most of the students were from large Eastern colleges and universities. One last thing. The Virginia bar exam is always very difficult. About 55% of the students who take it fail it. The bar exam tries to control how many people are admitted to practice law, and they do that by making it very difficult to pass. They have to try to control that because there are a lot of politicians in Washington, D.C. who hedge against the chance of losing an election and want to stay in practice law. It's given twice at that time, in December and in July, and I decided halfway through law school to take it for practice because I didn't want to have to go back if I didn't pass it the first time. So I took it halfway through law school at the end of the end of the first semester of my second year, and I passed it. And I was really shocked and surprised, but I give the credit to Parsons because I not only learned a lot at Parsons, I learned how to study. Parsons College had given me the opportunity to acquire an outstanding education. I am to this day grateful to Parsons College. I'm grateful to Charlie Barnett and to Chuck Ferguson, who recruited me to play basketball, and Chuck even came to my house later to be sure that I kept my promise to come. It's a wonderful experience, and thank you all for coming, and thank you, gentlemen, for all that you've done.
Ron Hunter, class of '72, was born and raised and educated in Fairfield. His teaching and coaching career touched many students in this community. His volunteer work has become a legend. In fact, we're thinking about the year of Ron Hunter because he was Citizen of the Year for the City of Fairfield Chamber of Commerce 2018, and last night he was inducted to the Fairfield High School Wall of Honor. Presenting Ron Hunter, Dan Breen.
I didn't know earlier this year when I was going to introduce Dose for his awards that it would become a part-time job, but here I am again. When you get later in the program, it's sort of interesting that a lot of what I would have had to say has been said, and what it's really telling us is that a lot of this is not just about the inductees, but of course it's about Parsons, and it's about the common experience that we had. And for many of us, the real love for the college and what it did for us personally. I've been here before when I got to explain what a wonderful step up in my life it was when, by whatever divine providence, I was able to get here. I had my own personal reasons for coming to Fairfield and coming to Parsons College, but Fairfield certainly wasn't one of them. I barely had even given that any consideration, but I remember coming here, and I was from a bigger city, and I was sort of horrified, like, oh, this is it, huh? But in my memory, Parsons College and Fairfield, Iowa are one thing. I can't hardly separate it. It was all part of the same experience. And I've stayed. I never left, which ought to tell you something. But I also found it really interesting that John mentioned the humanities, because where I was from, that word never came up much, humanities. But I remember coming here and signing up for these courses and reading the Song of Roland and Don Quixote and studying St. Augustine or reading Socrates and wondering, what am I doing? But I came to realize over time what it was. It was to make you a better person, just as John had referenced. And this all really ties together because, in a sense, that's exactly why Dose is going to be inducted here. Those lessons of the way we should live our life, or at least give us a way to think about our own lives where we could go forward and make a life in which we did the right things, is really the life that Dose has lived. Now, we've been friends for 40-some years, and I've spent most of that time making fun of him. And sometimes he's an easy target. But there is nothing, I have to say, that would exaggerate in any sense the quality of the life that he lived that I'm sure came from not just Parsons, but from the Fairfield community. And in a sense, I might also tell you, I don't grieve as much for Parsons as I might otherwise because I'm still here. Fairfield is still part of Parsons to me, and I guess it always will. But Dose has lived the life that Parsons prepared us all for. He just happened to start here. And I think it's just great as we finish our Wall of Honor ceremonies that it's a son of Fairfield, a person who grew up here and never left. And I wanted to give a little witness to a few things, or just a few qualities that if you know Dose, you know exactly the kind of thing I'm going to talk about. One is excellence. Parsons was always a place that demanded excellence. I had that strong sense from the time I came here, partly why I came here. And you can read the program of all the things that he's done, including having in three different sports, taking teams to state tournaments. That's not easy to do here, and he has. Among a whole list of achievements that you can see in the program. But there's also some other things I just want to mention, because we worked together for many, many things for many years, but track was one of them. And this tells you a little something about someone. We had great athletes, and we had great teams. And you'd get those splits, and you know the place, and everybody's paying attention. But there was one person I always knew that was going to get the split of the mediocre kid that's still out there running. And we always knew who's going to have that split. That's going to be Dose, because he always was concerned about them the same as everybody else. That's a quality. That's just a way of going through life that not everybody has. Fairness. Dose was even fair to the opponents. He was fair with the officials, and it was admirable to me. Where I was from was a little more of a take no prisoners kind of way of looking at the world. But with Dose, there was always that element of fairness, kindness, dignity, humor, not just on some days, but every day, because you would think you'd have some bad days, but if you know Dose, you don't have a lot of bad days for some reason. Just knowing how to treat people. Loyalty. I'll get a little on the soapbox there. Loyalty is kind of a lost art with younger people. It's not seen as a big deal. Whether it's loyalty to your school, people move around a lot, whether it's loyalty to the team, you may or may not quit. Loyalty to your family, staying together, and loyal to the town that you live. You don't have a lot of that anymore, at least not as much as maybe we once had hoped for. Dose is certainly that, loyalty. And service to the community, as so many of the inductees have gone on to live the life that Parsons and Humanities had prepared them for, to serve the community, but to do it not out of obligation, not for an award, but to do it because it was the right thing to do and because they took their own enjoyment in life from doing it quietly and openly, generous to people of all sorts. So with that, I would just like to say I'm glad to be able to introduce Ron Hunter to us, a man that's walked the walk and richly deserves the award.
Well, it's been 2 days of Dan acting different than he usually does. I'm sure on Monday we'll be back to the dose and a half stuff that he would say, or you're short and I'm tall. But I thank you very much for that. And I also want to thank the nominating committee for putting me in there. It's true. Being a native son of Fairfield makes it a little different for you. And my experience at Parsons was a little bit different. I can tell you when I first had an inkling of Parsons College, I didn't even know it was a college as far as I was concerned. Going to the public swimming pool that was attached to Trustee Gym. So that's my first real experience, and I didn't know it was a college. I just wanted to go swimming. And then I would say my second experience was when I would go watch Parsons College play football at not Blum Stadium, but at Trojan Stadium. They didn't have their own stadium at the time. So I lived real close to the high school, and I had the opportunity to go watch a few football games. And then, of course, that extended into going to Fry Thomas Fieldhouse and watching the likes of Denny Edwards and Al Wardlow play basketball. And I mention that because, ironically, Al Wardlow was my basketball coach my senior year of high school. And I heard a gentleman talk about O.B. Nelson, and my experience there is that O.B. Nelson was my Sunday school teacher, and I thought that was just because he, was that kind of a guy, but I'm beginning to think maybe it was to repent for some of the things that he might have done. So anyway, I graduated from Fairfield High School, and it had nothing to do with the fact that I didn't like Parsons College. I just wanted to get away to school. So I went to a school, Albert Lee, Minnesota, and that lasted for a year because I couldn't sustain myself educationally away from home financially. So I came back to Fairfield, and I can honestly tell you, had it not been for the fact that Parsons College existed, I'm not sure I would have ever completed a higher education. As I said, finances were not something we had a lot of in my family. And there also was no history, really, of higher education. But because I could stay at home and avoid the cost of room and board, and I got the part-time job to help pay for tuition, I was able to finish college. And I really owe my life, my ability to go on and teach others, to the fact that I had Parsons College here to accept me. Of course, now it's chronicled that I spent my life here and taught and coached here for over 35 years. And one of my proudest moments is another Parsons College connection that Bill Moore, who some of you will know, Dan Breen, who introduced me, and myself, for over a quarter of a century, coached girls track here at Fairfield High School. And I think that's really pretty neat that Parsons had that kind of an effect. I can also tell you that just this year, I volunteered to help coach the high school basketball team here. Well, the head coach would be Brian Wittenberg. Well, that's Joyce Berlin Wittenberg's son. Well, that's one connection, but then the next connection comes when we go to the state tournament. Well, who's there to greet us? Lois Stufflick Johnson, who made a big deal out of the fact that I was a Parsons College graduate, and those girls had no clue, and they didn't even care about it. They just ready to go play basketball. So my last thing to say, and he's not going to stand up, because this is my last thing to talk about. You can just stay right there because I'm going to finish it. Then I'm done. I didn't spend a lot of time on campus because I stayed at home. I went there for class, and then I was working. So, my campus life, that was kind of the trade-off. I didn't get the campus life that other people got with dormitories and a lot of things that happen on campus. But my senior year, I was able to join the cross-country team because it was the first year, and I can't remember how I got coerced into doing it because I hadn't run competitively for 3 years. But Coach Dave Neff started a team, and I was on it. We barely had enough to compete. We probably shouldn't have been running against varsity teams because after 3 years of not running, I was the #1 runner on the team. So it was this one meet, and I think Dave probably has pushed this back in the farthest recesses of his mind and maybe doesn't even remember it.
Cedar Rapids Co-College?
That's it. So Coach Neff is a very, very organized person. And he knew when we were going to leave. He knew when we were going to arrive, how long before the first race was going to start. Everything is organized to a T. But this day it really wasn't. So we get there, and we're in like a station wagon or something. We're going right alongside the course, which was a golf course or a park. I don't know for sure. I think there might have even been a fence there as a barrier. And the first indication there was something wrong was when one of the guys in the vehicle pointed out the window and said, "Aren't those guys racing?" Uh-oh, we're late. Well, it went from late to basically unethical when Coach Neff encouraged us to get out of the vehicle and join the race in progress. Well, that was a very defining moment for us, because we said no, and it had nothing to do with the fact that we didn't want to race or embarrass ourselves by getting in the race. We're trying to save Coach Neff's job and his reputation that day. I want to thank you for this opportunity. I want to thank you for being on that wall. It's important to me, and it's a very proud moment for me. Thank you very much.
Larry Moreno, I'm waving at you because we know you're recovering and we hope you get well soon, my friend. Larry Moreno, class of '66, dishwasher, football player, computer program for moon landing. Larry has shared his life in many ways with his fellow mankind. I have the honor of presenting Larry for the Wall of Honor, but before we do that, I've been told that Larry, the brothers of Sigma Phi Epsilon, will gather in 1 week in Omaha, Nebraska, and we will lift a glass to you for your continuing speedy recovery from major surgery last week. As a former teacher, and as you heard, an occasional coach, please may I ask by a raise of show of hands, how many people remember the name of American history with Dr. Tree, the name of Paul Revere? Have you heard of Paul Revere before? Okay. Did you know there's a town in Massachusetts that has been named in honor of that famous horse rider? That small town just north of Boston, on the shores of the Broad Sound, that's named in honor for the hero of the American Revolution. This is the same town, hometown of our next inductee, Larry Moreno. It was the summer of 1962. Frosty Westering, head football coach at Parsons College, reached out to a high school graduate from Revere, Massachusetts, and invited him to come to Parsons College to play football for the Wildcats. Larry accepted the offer and made the trek to Fairfield to be part of a vital, up-and-coming football program. Coach Westering offered a partial scholarship to Larry, but money was still tight for the freshman. Being an industrious young man with a thirst for an occasional beer, I've heard that somewhere earlier today. This is not Supreme Court, I'm sorry. A decision was reached to find a job on campus in the kitchen of the Sigma Phi Epsilon fraternity house. It turned out to be a very good move, as Larry would work the meals that did not interfere with football practice and trade sports spots on the weekends when there were away football games. Fast forward to the summer of 1965. My first memory of Parsons College on the arrival after a 16-hour bus ride from Cleveland, Ohio to Fairfield in June. My housing assignment was the C Quad of the Sigma Phi Epsilon fraternity on the north side of Lake Louise. The first thing you begin to think about, where do you sleep, bathe, and most importantly, where do you eat? The B Quad was next door, with the dining room of the complex being downstairs. On the second day, when I was finishing eating, a smiling fellow emerged from the kitchen and was looking for help in that SIGEP kitchen. His invitation was accepted, and this provided me with an opportunity to bend my elbow a little more frequently. Larry and I became lifelong friends. Fast forward to 2006. The SIGEP fraternity felt that it had been too many years since graduation, and we were beginning to have a little extra free time on our hands. Larry Moreno, Fred Ramlow, Herbie Weiss were in attendance and felt that it was a great spot that we should meet in Las Vegas, Nevada, because wherever you lived, you could get a nonstop flight there. And so we gathered, many stories were told, reminiscences were done, and a biennial reunion was set. Fraternity brothers and their spouses, this would become a reality. Larry and Herbie took on the job of bringing us together and were very instrumental in Williamsburg, Virginia, Myrtle Beach, New Orleans, Nashville, San Antonio, and now Omaha next week. Larry's career is outlined in your program, and what a fine way to spend your life making good things happen for many people. Larry and his bride were able to split time between a condo in Asheville, North Carolina, and West Palm Beach, Florida. for a number of years, and now they are full-time residents of Florida. Larry was notified a few weeks ago that he was going to have to undergo major surgery, and his doctor would not allow them to postpone this surgery. So today, Larry and Mary Rose are watching online from their condo in Florida. We wish him Godspeed in his recovery from the surgery, and we give Larry a wave of congratulations as I introduce fraternity brother Jim Cornick to accept on Larry Moreno's behalf.
Larry, Rosemary, hi. And I hope you're recovering, and I know you're going to come back here and see your plaque on the Wall of the Honor. Before I start, I'd just like to tell a little story about recently. Larry bragged a lot about how much fun Asheville was, or is. A very, very liberal town in North Carolina, just in the middle of redneck country. But it's very, very creative, and there's a lot of beer going on there. But we went out to dinner with Larry and Rosemary, and they were talking about how Larry would travel to Dublin and London and Hong Kong, and he always took Mary Rose with him. But then a passport and a visa came from Saudi Arabia, and he didn't tell Mary Rose about that. And it angered Mary Rose, and she tore up his visa and his passport. And the reason Larry understood Saudi Arabia, didn't treat women very well, and said she couldn't stay with me, she couldn't stay in a hotel and so forth. But anyhow, Larry was able to go through some hoops and get his passport and his papers to go to Saudi Arabia. And he was there for quite a while, and he would call home for Mary Rose, and he didn't get a very good reception each time he called. And so about a month in Saudi Arabia, and he came home, and he said he put on some Willie Nelson and drank some scotch, and he went and saw Mary Rose, and they settled the issue. And after Saudi Arabia, he met her in London, and then they toured Amsterdam and Scotland together. But Larry was a character and a good brother and a good friend. And he asked me if I would deliver his acceptance speech, and I'm honored to do that, and I hope I do it justice. Larry would do it a lot better than I can. But these are words from Larry. He says, first of all, I want to thank the members of the Wall of Honor Committee for selecting me as honoree in this final introduction. It is extremely appreciated. I would especially like to thank my brothers, Dave Neff, for his great introduction, and Jim Cornick for accepting the honor in my place. And to John Blackstock and Nancy Weirton and others providing the alumni website and newsletter that keeps us all informed together. Thanks to all. Secondly, I want to apologize for not being able to attend, but I am watching, so don't screw it up. However, I promise to come to Fairfield to visit the wall, view my plaque, and pay my respects to the 99 others who have gained the same honor. My time in high school was great. I didn't study long and hard, but played long and hard. So much that my guidance counselor told me in no uncertain terms, Moreno, you better go into the service or get a civil servant's job, because you aren't going to amount to a hill of beans. Now, at that time, he was right. My grades were not good, and forget about SAT scores. Knowing I had to do more, I went to Huntington Prep School in Boston for a year and worked hard to bring up my scores and grades. Well, it must have worked because I got a few offers, and Parsons was one of them. There were other local offers in Boston, but because I couldn't wait to get out of Revere, I selected Parsons. I needed to leave because, well, being Italian, my whole family either lived on the same street or a few blocks away and knew everything you did and knew if you went to the bathroom and didn't flush. I can't tell you how much Parsons changed my life and gave me the opportunities and confidence to grow. From that first day on campus in late August of 1962 to my last day in September of 1966, I don't think I ever looked back or had a day where I never looked forward to the next one. Playing ball for Frosty with his disciplined slogans, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. You can't go out with the Owls at night and expect to get up with the Eagles in the morning. It stayed with me for all my life. And getting the educational opportunity to study subjects I enjoyed and learning how to study, build a work ethic that continues this day. Being lectured by a doctor, then additional classes by a teacher, with the ability to have tutor sessions by a grad or undergrad really gave me the foundation to change my old habits and become a student. Now, this is not to say that I didn't have any fun on campus. You don't get the nickname like Igor by being introverted and studious. I'm sure there are a number of alleged stories about my adventures still out there. One of the best opportunities at Parsons came when I was asked to pledge Sigma Phi Epsilon. Now, many of us joined fraternities and built friendships. I was no different, except these weren't just friendships. This was, and still, really a brotherhood. I've always been a part of teams from high school to college and to my work career. And you know how close you can get to some of those teammates. Well, Fred Ramlow and I became brothers in name as SIGEPs and in our hearts. When Fred recently passed, that part of my heart hurt. Others have passed. With this, well, he was talking about Larry Darrow and Kirk Armstrong and great brothers, but Fred Ramlow and I were brothers. With his nickname Rookie and mine Igor, we were like the odd couple, but we had a hell of a lot of fun. Fred could answer any sports question you could ask and was a huge Packers fan. Of course, I was a Patriot fan, so we had tons of arguments. It's funny, at our first reunion in Las Vegas 12 years ago, Jim Cornick, Larry Blix, Chris Adams, Fred, and others were sitting watching a basketball game after a long night of drinking and socializing, and it was like the 40 or so years from graduation just melted away. We were back in the quad. I was arguing with Fred over football, and the other guys were chiding each other as we had done years ago. The feeling was the basis for continuing the reunions and my efforts to find as many brothers as possible to get them to attend these events. Where did those 40 years go? Well, I'm proud and happy to say we were all busy making good lives for ourselves and our families, garnering success in the line of the business that we chose. I say success because of all the things that Parsons stands for. For me, the success that I have had stems completely from my time at Parsons and the experience that Parsons gave me to go out into the world. I literally fell into my line of work, and I have Fred Ramlow to thank for it. After passing exams for flight school, I always wanted to be a pilot. On August of 1966, I filled my physical for the service at Fort Des Moines. I had just had appendicitis and an ulcer, so they wouldn't take me. And he goes, not sore heels like someone else I know. Fred was working in New Jersey at Bendix Navigation and the Control Division, and suggested I come out to interview. I got the job, got into management training program, and when I worked in systems development, I found my niche. Since 1966, I have been working with cutting-edge computer systems with some very large companies. And I am proud to say I never went out looking for jobs. As I climbed the ladder, the jobs came to me. I was very lucky, and really, thanks for learning the intercourse people had. I never had a bad day at work. When I decided to go out on my own as a systems consultant for direct marketers, all that learning and interaction with others helped me be successful as well. Again, I say that success started at Parsons. In closing, I would like to thank all the Wall of Honor folks, my brothers, and you all for attending and wishing all honorees well. I especially would like to thank all the professors and coaches at Parsons for giving their time and energy to this character from Revere so that he and so many others would have opportunities that we express. I miss Parsons, but those days will live in my heart and my mind forever. Oh, and one last thing to my old guidance counselor. I feel like I am on top of that hill of beans. Thank you.
We've been blessed with Fairfield High School alumni, and this was another. Don Samuelson class of '64. Don has touched many lives, being part of the 34th Army Band based here in Fairfield. The number of ceremonies where his trumpet has been heard are too numerous to mention. Don's long-term friend, Roger Gillespie, will present Don for the Wall.
Good morning. It's great to be here on this celebratory occasion to introduce to you my good friend Don Samuelson. We've been friends since 1958, and we enlisted in the 34th Infantry Division Band together in 1959. Sam was the president of our graduating class in 1960. He was in the National Honor Society, band, choir, drama, football, baseball, and probably one of his most notable achievements was he played the part of Chief Sitting Bull in Fairfield's production of Annie, Get Your Gun. Because of my observation point with Sam, my remarks are going to be kind of focused on the uniform that he's wearing behind you. You can read his accomplishments in the business world and his volunteer work, but I want to focus on the job he did as a member of the 34th Army Band. Following graduation from high school, he reported to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for basic training. Following basic, transferred to Fort Dix, New Jersey for advanced infantry training. He enrolled in Parsons College in January of '61 and graduated with the class of 1964. And he put himself through Parsons College because of, as Dose mentioned, there wasn't a lot of money at home. And he helped defray the costs of Parsons by pumping gas for Uncle George Kessel at Kessel's Conoco and selling cars for Jefferson Motor Company. During and after his Parsons years, while he was growing his business and his family, he continued his tenure with the 34th Army Band. And it's a National Guard band, so there's a lot of time. There's 16 hours a month that the band gets together. And you can imagine the countless hours he spends in preparing for those 16 hours when the full band gets there. His career with the band was marked with competence, professionalism, and advancement. Under his leadership, the Army Band successfully completed 2 overseas deployment missions. He was instrumental in developing a marksmanship program for the 34th Army Band that ended up winning the Governor's 10 Trophy, which is emblematic of the best marksmanship scores in the state of Iowa, 8 times. And Don really enjoyed the bragging rights that were incumbent with that award. It was fun for him to go to meetings with infantry soldiers, other trigger pullers, and when they found out that the band were better on the rifle than they were, he enjoyed that. Also during this period, the 34th Army Band won the Pershing Trophy twice, which is emblematic of the best marksmanship scores for the 5th Army, which comprise all the Army units in states west of the Mississippi except for Minnesota. Also, we won the Eisenhower Trophy several times, which is emblematic of the best unit in the state. To get that award, you have to be designated a superior unit. And during Sam's tenure, the band won superior unit designation in 1990, 1991, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96. You got to get the idea. 98, 2000, 2001, and 2002. A record that no other unit's been able to match. Also, during his tenure as first sergeant, we won the Eisenhower Trophy in 1991 and 1994. In the years he was acting commander, the band again won the Eisenhower Trophy. And today, his is the only non-commissioned officer's name that's engraved on that trophy. and that's something that he is justifiably proud of. Sam's a true friend, a good friend in good times, a better friend when times aren't so good. He's loyal. He's an honor graduate of the United States Army Sergeant Major's Academy, turned down promotion to Sergeant Major so he could stay with the band and mentor and guide young soldiers, of which he's helped hundreds. He still plays a mean trumpet. He yells at the TV during the Hawkeye football games, and he can't wait to get back on the golf course. Don's committed to his faith, his family, his friends, his community, and his country. And it's an honor and privilege to congratulate Don Samuelson on his selection for the Parsons College Wall of Honor. Don?
Thank you. Thanks to the committee, I do not take this award lightly, believe me. Raj, in his introduction, failed to mention, but I've got it in my first paragraph, none of those military awards would have happened without he and another gentleman, Tim Nelson, who guided me, told me maybe what direction should go. Maybe instead of grabbing the phone and start raving at someone at the Adjutant General's office, let's get our ducks in order first and calm me down. It's because of them that a lot of the positive aspects happened in my career. And in the automotive end of it, my brother and partner, Sammy Samuelson, we had a wonderful relationship. We didn't argue. If we disagreed, we'd close the door and hashed it out. We didn't use different CPAs. We didn't use different lawyers. We had complete trust in one another. When planning my college education, having always been an Iowa Hawkeye fan, I kind of wanted to go to Iowa. However, as in a couple other cases, the money wasn't there. It was just not going to be. Because I could go to Parsons, live at home, work at some part-time jobs, and pay for my own education. After the choice was made and I returned from the Army full-time, I started classes at Parsons, met some members from the Phi Delta Omega fraternity, which we later went national as Lambda Chi Alpha. Many of the brothers I've kept in touch with. They provided me a social environment, a good social environment. One of them's here today, Ron Long and his lovely wife. Next month, my wife and I are going to go on a little trip out east, and we're going to visit a couple of the others, Jerry Over and Van Hackett. The instructors at Parsons College were of the highest caliber. Some were even from the Ivy Leagues. The classes were not huge, as been mentioned. I think 25, 30 was a big class. And they cared about you. You weren't a number, you were a person. You were Don Samuelson, you weren't number 341. And they cared, they helped you. They didn't try to deter you. Dr. Ken Carpenter, the band instructor at the time, taught me more on the trumpet, on how to play it better than anybody before or since. He was a good teacher. He was a saxophone man, but he knew how to play the trumpet too. And with my tenure in the Guard, obviously, that had a little something to do with that too. I just wish I could play it as good now as I did then. And remember the workshops. If you weren't achieving a passing or C grade, you had to attend another hour of class a week. Or if you just wanted to, you could anyway. Hey, another hour of class, no extra charge, and usually the professor was there. It was a wonderful, helping institution. Parsons got known as a second chance school. What's wrong with second chances? Has anyone out here ever needed a second chance? Most of us have, I bet you. And there was nothing wrong with that. and I know you all can too, relate to someone you know that got a second chance at Parsons College, made good with it, became a productive member of society and their occupation. Now, what in the H is wrong with that? In summary, Parsons College was a second choice for me that turned in to be a good choice. It was an institution that I met love of friends for life, excellent educators, an exciting time, and prepared me for what was to become my careers. Looking in the rearview mirror, it was one of the best decisions of my life. I am so glad I made Parsons my educational home. It's just a terrible shame that it does not exist today. I'm so proud today to have my family here with me, my son Michael, my daughter Beth and her husband Chris, and friends, my niece Janie, and the girl I dated while at Parsons College, my wife of 54 years. None of it happens, Jean, without your support. Thank you.
Joyce Berlin Wittenberg, class of '72. Joyce has touched so many student athletes in Southeast Iowa in her career, it would be impossible to make a guess. Her math classes were always held in high regard with the students. Presenting Joyce Berlin Wittenberg to the Wall of Honor is her daughter, Penny Wittenberg IV.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome here, and I want to say a special shout out to an alum from Parsons who's in attendance on behalf of our family, my aunt, Becky Queisner. I have the honor to introduce to you to Joyce Wittenberg. While she does hold the title of mom for me, she also holds the title of teacher and coach. Today we are honoring her many accomplishments in her collegiate and professional career. However, if you were to ask her, she would say that her greatest accomplishment would be her family. We are all so proud of her, not only for what she has done, but for who she is and who she has taught us to be. She and my dad, Bob, raised the three of us while they were both full-time teachers. On top of that, they were both coaching, umping, and reffing. Mostly she was yelling at the umps, but sometimes that was my dad. My younger brother, Brian, is by far the kindest of the three of us. My older sister, Jerry, is the smartest. And I, being the middle child, am a smart aleck, Mom, smart aleck, which right now she's possibly rethinking her decision to let me have the microphone. In all honesty, though, she is our biggest fan. She follows us wherever we go, even in our coaching careers. She helps my sister in any way she can with with my sister's children, my brother's children also. And as Coach Hunter mentioned earlier, my brother coached basketball this year for Fairfield High School, and she and my dad never missed a game in his coaching career. He was honored to be the Golden Triangle Coach of the Year, and in the article it said he's vying for the position to be the third best coach in the family, just to let you know these people were raised by. As an athlete, I obviously wasn't around during these days. I only know the stories, but luckily she's a little bit of a hoarder. So we have plenty of memorabilia. I don't know if I would have believed all of the stories anyway. I want to say thank you to her, her teammates, and her coaches for blazing the trail for female athletes. Playing multiple sports in a time before Title IX, and then to make national level tournaments in both as well is truly outstanding. Some highlights for her coaching days. She was on the state rules committee for softball for 6 years. She was the second woman in Iowa to get 200 victories for softball. She coached more than one pitcher who had 100+ victories in their high school career. She was the Coach of the Year in 1980. That would turn out to be a great year for her because I was born later. She created a middle school softball program at Cardinal and played an integral role in not only designing the field, but also building it. And she helped Fairfield softball attend 3 state tournaments. My thoughts on Coach Witts. She coached with passion and energy that is unmatched. There are multiple pictures of her coaching with the base runners that are scoring, and somehow she's right there in the action because she's just as excited for them to be scoring. As a teacher, some accomplishments that she's had: she went on a vocational tour with the Navy to talk about how math is used on a regular basis. She's been listed among who's who of America's teachers. She wrote the curriculum and the implementation for calculus at Fairfield High School. She attended and presented numerous national and regional math conferences, and wrote and received a grant from Hewlett-Packard to have a fully funded classroom with graphing calculators and textbooks for Fairfield High School. My thoughts on Mrs. Wittenberg. I have to say that because I would get in trouble for calling her mom in class. She went above and beyond for her students. Her passion for softball, she was also passionate about math and teaching. She loves it, and I think it is her personal goal to make her students love math as well. She would stay after school to tutor or even have students over at our houses, and there were multiple times when her students came back from college to get an extra session with her and my dad. Just a little bit about our family. If you walk out of here knowing one thing about my mom, it is that she loves being a grandma. Her 5 grandchildren truly are the light of her life. So I asked each of them some of the things that they first thought of when they thought of grandma. Haley, who is the oldest, said she's smart, ambitious, and fun. The middle 3, Caitlin, Kendra, and Emmett, all said grandma is very kind, then proceeded to talk about the snacks they get when they're at grandma's. It capped off with the swimming trips, crazy adventures, and the real entertainment that they get from climbing on grandma's roof. Letty, who is only 2, when we asked her about grandma, simply said, Grandpa. Sorry, Mom, even though today's your day, you can't win them all, as you've told us many times. In conclusion, I just want to say congratulations to all of the members, but particularly to my mom. When I went to college, I received a degree in mathematics and education and played college softball. And I was teased many times about trying to be like my mom. And then while it used to embarrass me, now I can look people in the eye and say thank you. One of the things that she said about her mother is she gave her life to make ours better. Thank you, Mom, that I could say that to you too. It is my privilege to introduce to you my mother and my role model, Joyce Berlin Wittenberg.
Now you know why I had her speak up here. She's just flowing with information. Thank you, Penny. I really feel that my family is one of my biggest successes. I'm so proud of all of them. And she talked a little bit about each one. Jerry is a CPA and has opened her own office in Richland. And with her husband's help, they remodeled it, and it's just fabulous. Good luck to you both this year in Richland. Penny is a coach at Bethel University in St. Paul, Minnesota. And she has taken her father and I on our spring break trips to Florida, so we've gotten to spend a week in Florida with her, driving, chaperoning, rule book expert, you know. So we thank her for that. When I retired, she invited me up to coach with her, and I was her assistant coach for the JV for 2 springs. That was pretty fun. The next year I did not do that, but she took me on the high school spring break trip to Hawaii for a week. And thank you, Ron, for mentioning Brian. Brian had a wonderful first year as head coach. So thank you, family and everybody. I'm proud to have been now a farm girl, and I didn't go to a country school, but I went to a 2-story brick school. We had K through 8. There were 2 grades in a class, so I had the same teacher for 5th and 6th, and then she moved with us to 7th and 8th. It was my luck that she loved mathematics, and that's where mine came from. Without a high school, we had to choose whether I would go to the school with girls' sports or the school without. Well, we were on the border of the school without. So it was quite a financial and time-consuming thing for me to go 25 miles to the other school for sports. So, and we weren't rich, we were poor at the time. So that was to my parents' credit. My mom was an incredible person. She paved the way for me and other women as she was a full-time working mother at the time. I started college in Denison, Iowa, and my teammates started, as my teammates did, I started with a PE major. Well, I was very lucky that one of my teammates was studying pharmacy at the time and in math class, so she recommended that I get into another math class and go ahead with that. So I eventually graduated with a double major in mathematics and physical education. When Midwestern closed after 2 years, we didn't know what we were going to do. We had started in the fall, and other schools had started. They'd been going 2 or 3 weeks. How are we going to enroll in another school? But a wonderful deal was made with Parsons. They didn't start classes till October 1st. And we arrived and started. And it was amazing. The Kennedy kids and coach had come earlier in the summer. So now we have 2 adversaries of teams put together, and somehow Bob Spencer came out on top and made us all look fabulous. And we had a great career. When we went to playoffs that first year, Coach wanted to save some money. So he only took 7 to playoffs in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 6 of them were All-Americans, and then there was me. In my later years, I thought of myself as the Dennis Rodman of Parsons Wild Kittens. Not the whole tattoo and piercings part, just rebound and get the shooters the ball. I remember having wonderful teachers at Parsons. Dr. Roberts had assembled an amazing staff. In education, we had Dr. Box. Dr. Clark has been already mentioned, and I want to tell you I keep up with his daughter, Deb. Today would have been his 95th birthday. So happy birthday, Dr. Clark. In PE, we have Very Young, who is here and honored. I ran into a lady the other day. "Oh, you went to Parsons College?" she said to me. "I went to Parsons College. I played basketball for Very Young." Yeah. I don't know how old she was. Okay. In the mathematics department, we had Dr. Timon and Vic Rail, and they both loved mathematics. All the professors, and from more I hear in more areas, were very caring individuals. Everyone knew Lee Gobble, and our coaches were Bob Spencer and Ray Ham and Ethan Town, and they led us to amazing seasons, socializing, memories that go beyond. And whenever I watch League of Their Own, I think of us. People we should say a special thanks to. They've been mentioned before, but just give me a second. Dave and Sherry took on this 10-year commitment of awards and planning and hosting this weekend. This Cincinnati man overcame a heart attack and still carried on. And we better not forget the countless hours that Sherry has spent in this whole endeavor. John Blackstock had done Lifetime Career Achievement Awards at his high school in Pennsylvania and brought the idea to Dave and the Alumni Association. So they took off on the Parsons Wall of Honor. And he and Dave have written numerous articles through the years reflecting just wonderful information for the public. John Braidwood, I probably said that wrong. Yes. Raised $250,000 for the entryway back here, the hall for Parsons, and brought the stained glass windows from Barhide Chapel. And it is just beautiful, fabulous. Biff Coomer stepped up to do the Parsons clothing and memorabilia, and I saw him helping this committee lots of hours. Nancy Wortman for all the information with that, news, obituaries, keeping us up to date. Mark Schaefer has a wonderful display at the Carnegie Museum. Stop by and see it if you hadn't. And while you're there, ask him about the Abe Lincoln collection. I couldn't believe all the stuff he had on Abe, and Abe lived around here. Pat Spencer has been here for all of us through lots of things, for Bob and others. She's his wardrobe technician. That's a job, but she's a designer. She designs things, and she has been there. And I'm telling you, we sat and talked last night, and things that Bob was just 2 seconds late, she would fill in. I mean, the two of them together have a fabulous memory of people and things, and she has the patience of Job. Good job, Pat. I also want to thank Rose Kennedy for my nomination. There have been many people committed to helping my life be what it is today, especially my husband, Bob, who supported me through my coaching and teaching. Thank you. I truly wanted to be a teacher that taught not only subject matter, but life skills as well. Teaching people, not just subjects. And I wanted to be a coach that inspired people to play the best they could and to love the game. I want to represent Parsons as well as possible as a precious alumni. I've been blessed to work with great people at Cardinal, Fairfield, Pekin, and Ottumwa High Schools. I'm the only one that can say that. I also taught part-time for Kirkwood and Indian Hills community colleges. Part of leading a significant life is to help people around you flourish. Listening this morning, you have all done very well in that aspect, and congratulations to all. Thank you for this honor. Thank you for coming.
Customarily, each year we've inducted 10, but since 2009 there were 9 inductees. This year we have 11, and folks, we have come to number 11. John Blackstock, class of '64. John has been the visionary for this event and the glue that provides the consistency for the communication to all of us as editor of the Parsons College E-News. It's fitting that he be the 100th inductee of this Parsons College Wall of Honor. I feel blessed that John has asked me to do his presentation. The year was 2008. It was the middle of June, and I was still working full-time at Iowa State Bank and Trust Company here in Fairfield. I had a note left on my desk that a John Blackstock, a Parsons College alumni, was trying to get a hold of me and would be stopping through on his way back from a meeting in Des Moines the first of next week. These were with fraternity friends from Tau Kappa Epsilon that had gatherings each June at Lake Panorama just outside of Des Moines. And John of Phi Sig had been invited to attend. Who was this John Blackstock, and why did he want to visit with me? Little did I know the impact of that meeting the following Tuesday, what it would have on my life and what it would have on the legacy of Parsons College. The next Tuesday arrived, and John came into my office at the bank, and an hour later, a vision for honoring Parsons College students and alumni had been presented. I sat stunned. I sat amazed to hear about what John had experienced and participated in with his high school in Pittsburgh, North Hills High School, and the gatherings he had organized for his Phi Sigma Epsilon fraternity brothers at Parsons College. This man was on a mission, and he was for real in making things happen. I came home and shared it with my bride, Sherry, and she offered to take my temperature to see if I was all right, or was I delirious or dizzy. And to date, he still calls me Diz. We discussed this further and decided that John's vision and mission to honor 100 student alums over a 10-year period was something that should be addressed. After sleeping on it overnight, communication was established with John and his bride, Rhonda, saying yes, we would assist in this vision and mission. 6 of Sherry's family had attended, graduated, or worked at Parsons College, so it was natural to help recognize those family members and others who had attended Parsons. Fast forward 11 years, and the reality of what our Parsons student alumni base has accomplished in their chosen professions and their community service, especially their volunteer work, has been exceptional to learn and share here with the alumni base in the Fairfield community. In addition to the vision for the honor, Wall of Honor, John stepped up and did the editor, publisher of the second vision, being the electronic newsletter that you all receive. Parsons College Alumni Associations was formed about this time, and a gathering place for student and alumni contact information. And as I mentioned earlier, Nancy Worthinen, the president, is very close to having 4,000 contacts. John and Rhonda worked tirelessly to upgrade the newsletter and develop a format that could easily be replicated on a quarterly basis. Articles were written and submitted, edited, and then published. Alumni and faculty were encouraged to submit. Information about fraternities, sororities, independent gatherings, the decision to include a memoriam obituary section was conceived in order to keep the student alumni updated. At this, as time moved forward, John and Rhonda became very close friends with us, and many memorable and productive visits were scheduled. As many of you know, Rhonda passed away suddenly in December of 2016, but John continues to move forward on this focus and collect and share current retrospective information in the e-news. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce you to a man who's always kept Parsons at the forefront of his calling in life, a man who breathes Kelly green and white. Our final inductee to the Parsons Wall of Honor, Mr. John Blackstock, class of '64.
Well, there's only one left. We're getting close. My journey started when I graduated from high school, and I found out I was the only one of the in crowd that wasn't going to college. So after serving as a one-person farewell committee to everybody and all my friends who were going to college, and a note firmly tucked in my pocket saying that I probably shouldn't go there because it would prove to be too difficult, I rushed up to the guidance counselor's office and I said, "Miss Delp, please, I have to go to college. Everybody's going to college and I need to go. There's something wrong with this picture here." So on that particular day, she fumbled through her desk and she found a Time magazine article, and with Rayford Johnson on the front, August 1960. And in the pages of that magazine was a story about this school out in Ohio. I didn't know the difference. There was this school that accepted marginal students. Well, I already knew I was pretty well marginal. But anyway, Ms. Delp helped me fill out an application, send the application off. 2 weeks later, I got this letter from Parsons College, which after getting 20 other rejects, I looked at that for quite some time before I had the whatever's to open it. Anyway, that was my acceptance. So, fast forwarding here, downtown to Pittsburgh, bought a green trunk. Parents plowed everything in it. I have no idea how they paid for it. Sent me on a bus, carted the bus across Chicago onto a Trailways bus, and I was delivered to the Liggett Hotel. And after standing in the Liggett Hotel and being the last one standing after the college representatives had taken everybody off to, I assume, to the college, I said, "What about me?" And they said, "Well, what's your name?" I told them. So, "Well, you're right here. You're staying at the Liggett Hotel." I said, "No, you don't understand. I'm going to college. I'm not coming to a hotel." Well, that particular semester, we doubled the entire enrollment of the college in 1 year. It went from 700 to 1,400. Kids were down in the trustee gym. More kids were leaving than were coming in because of the situation. So the gentleman at the hotel ushered me upstairs to the 3rd floor to my residence. Bunk bed, big heater over there, and there's a rope attached to the side of the heater. And I said, so, well, what's that rope for? And he said, well, you know, in case there's a fire here, what you want to do is you want to break the window, you want to throw the rope out the window, and then you want to hoist yourself down the rope into the alley below. Not such a bad idea, really, because I knew if I got down to the alley, Biff Comer, who was then a bartender, was probably tending bar next door at the TNC. So anyway, living on the 3rd floor was an experience. We had a bullpen shower. We had one phone. I remember one night the phone rang, someone answered it, and it said, "Phone for Bill." Well, 6 people showed up, and we had a Boodle, a Bill, a Biff, and a whatever. Later on, knocked on the door. You're moving out of the hotel. I'm moving out of the hotel. Good. Going to college. Well, not quite. You're going to 203 East Grimes Street to the home of Mr. and Mrs. Roy Manning because they've agreed to take you in. I said, oh, that's super. Well, it was super, except for the fact that during the course of the night, those 6 or 7 trains were about 30 feet from their back door, and the house basically shook each and every night. In high school, I was a half an athlete, so I thought I'd walk onto the football team. No problem. I had a couple letters. Well, I walked onto the football team, and being a lineman, the first person I saw was Monty Versteeg. Monty Versteeg was the largest male boy born in the state of Iowa at 14 pounds, and he weighed 325 pounds at that time and was regarded as the largest football player in college football. Standing right next side of Monty Versteeg was a gentleman named Lou Wilson. Well, Lou Wilson was only 280 pounds, and I said to myself, I'll be damned if I'm going to be an appetizer for these guys here. And if that wasn't bad enough, you had Jerry Statons there, and you had Don Butterballs to deal with, and that was no picnic either. Maybe even a Dean Hunnell and a Dick Barton around. Well, Dick Barton wasn't there yet. So anyway, that was that. So I thought, well, basketball, I can do that. So I ran down to the basketball. The first thing I see are these 2 big, tall, African-American gentlemen. One is named Denny Edwards, who became a fraternity brother. The other was Claude Irvin, and they called them the Twin Towers. And they were about 6'7", 6'8", or so, and they led the team to Kansas City every year. So that was out too. I did latch on to a fraternity. I did latch on to the newspaper where I was able to write. And when I say first chance, it was first chance because I didn't flunk out of anywhere. I was pre-warned that I would flunk out, so I went directly. And I never left. People said, when did you go there? 60. When did you graduate? 4 years. Oh, you got out in 4 years. I got out in 4 years. But let me tell you what, there was a thing called the trimester system that allowed me to go solidly for 4 straight years and get out in four straight years. When I was finally told that I was going to graduate, it was a sad, sad day because I too had fallen in love with Fairfield, Iowa. And I am so, so, so grateful that it will never, ever, ever leave my heart and my mind. And I will continue to do what I can do to give back. So I left Parsons basically with 3 things, all totally unsuspected. One was a diploma. No one ever thought that would happen. Secondly, I left Parsons with a wife. I married my college sweetheart, who's the mother of my son. And I left with a job, and the job was in Boston. So in closing, I would say this honor, which I am so grateful for, Dave Neff for the presentation, Mr. Harding, Dave Harding for the nomination, all the other people who have been so supportive. And if you look over here in a minute, I'm going to just tell you how great these people are. And I would tell my son that you probably wouldn't be here today if I hadn't gone to Parsons College.
John has a few other closing comments we're going to let him make now, and then we will get ready to dismiss for our final photo op out here before our luncheon. So I will give John the microphone, and then we'll do a wrap-up and pray for a good meal.
Well, it's only 2 o'clock. I'll bet you're really glad to see me back. I said most of what I had to say there, except it's just one phenomenal thing after another for the last 10 years. Been totally, totally blessed. I think as we look back and say, what makes us feel good? I'll tell you what makes us feel good. 22 of you, former, current Wall of Honor members coming back today. That makes us really feel good. And if you want a history of the Wall of Honor, go by the Daily Ledger from yesterday. There's a real nice front page story about the Wall of Honor, but that is sensational. I have been the lucky one and the privileged one to write 100 bios of these great people that you'll be looking at on that wall. 99 of them were relatively easy. There was one that was a little more difficult, and you can probably guess which one that was. So I would tell you, this special class you're looking at over here, you look at Cindy Thompson Albers, 42 years teaching, coaching, 27 years giving to the community on the parks and recreation. She founded 2 basketball programs in the state of Iowa. She's got major recognition from the state. How about that for a wild story? Then you look to her left and you see little Billy Atkins. Life, career, everything almost ruined in a car accident. He's playing basketball by accident with a bunch of people. He gets discovered by the great OB, legendary O.B. Nelson. And what wasn't brought out today was he was not only one of the greatest basketball players, but he was drafted by the Chicago Bulls and played in their system for 2 years. Then he took those leadership skills, that competitive spirit, into sales and management and became a star there.
Can I interrupt for a minute?
No, what?
The reason why I heard was John Williams, who played the year before me. He saw me playing out in front of the gym, and he's the one who got OB.
We're going to credit John Williams, who's a fine man. I know John, with the discovery of, did you cut him in on your contract, I hope? Then you have John, my friend John Braidwood. I did not like John Braidwood. When I met John Braidwood, I did not like him at all. You all want to know why I didn't like him. The reason I didn't like him was because I met him in the Dream Motel parking lot, and the son of a buck was trying to sell me a brick. And he wanted $500 for that brick. John Braidwood had an outstanding career, developing 3 banks at one time. You heard what he gave back. He's had, for 40 years, he's supported kids from overseas in a contribution, and he currently has a teenager that he looks after every week. How's that for a wild story? And then next to him, George doesn't have a beer in his hand right now, so it might be a little difficult to recognize him from the college days. But here's a guy, last class of Parsons College, George, last class. At the age of 31, 32, he is CEO of the Tanninger Child Health Behavior Mental Center in Iowa. And not only that, but later in his career, when they built a new medical center, because he had put together so many programs, so many things, they named the health center the Estill Center. How's that for a wild story? And then you look at Robert E. Fox. I'm reminded to do the E because there's several foxes, and he does not want to be confused with any other foxes. Can you imagine Robert Fox not being in control? Can you imagine him floundering around and like, oh my God, what am I going to do? He's a picture of strength. Well, guess what? He got his strength at Parsons College, and he got recalibrated at Parsons College. And not only did he start out here on the ground floor, but he went to Fresno State. He retired as vice president and dean of students. And then, what's not been mentioned, 2 years later, they come after him to bring him back, and they make him vice chancellor. How's that for a wild story? Next to him, Mr. Grooms, Tom Grooms. You got out just in time in '60, let me tell you. You could have been stayed in the railroad too. Tom is an industrial relations attorney, has traveled the world. He's negotiated all over the world. and he made a major, major impact in South Africa. The concern for all of the shortcomings, all of the things that the non-white people were being deprived of. So he put forth his effort, and he was on the team and the push and the promotion to develop free and fair elections in South Africa, and by golly, it happened, and he's a part of it to some degree. Then you look behind him. Who's that little guy behind him? Oh, it's little Ronnie Hunter. You ever get the idea that little people have a complex? You know, he had to wear his letter jacket just to let people know that he was a letterman. Well, let me tell you how special this guy is here. He is proof and living knowledge that nice guys can finish first. Because there's nobody nicer than Ron Hunter. Nobody can say no to, and maybe Dave Neff is one couldn't say no to anything. Ron Hunter, he's been inducted yesterday into the High School Hall of Fame, today into the College Wall of Honor. How's that for special? Special, special. Next to him, Jim Cornick. Sig up, I never liked him either, but he's representing Larry Moreno, who I have a lot of respect for. Larry Moreno was a bartender at the Den, and he slid through school, and he got out with a liberal arts degree, and didn't have a job, nothing, went out. Somebody, very much like some other people, a company took a flyer. He got into computer design, and next thing you know, here is Larry Moreno, the old bartender, doing computer systems designs for the Saturn space program and sending people to space. Later on, he developed his own business and went out on his own too, so he kept it going from there. How's that for another wild story? Now, those of you that know Don Samuelson, you probably thought that he was born with a trumpet in his mouth, but it wasn't. He acquired that at a later stage. Donnie only had 2 dual successful careers. Number one, he doesn't like to tout it, but he was co-owner of the Ford dealership here in town. But not only that, the big thing that he's so proud of is his 42 years in the National Guard, the U.S. Army National Guard. And he has literally taken the 34th, whatever National Guard band all over the world. And they have awards, so many, I won't read them again because Mr. Gillespie did. But how's that for another wild story? And then lastly, sitting back there, is the Dennis Rodman of the ladies basketball Wild Kittens. Coach, teacher, we're not talking general math, folks. We're talking calculus. We're talking some serious math, which she taught both in high school and college. And then, of course, she was in the softball coaching, and she is the second lady coach in the state of Iowa to bring her softball team, her school, 200 victories. How's that? And not only that, even more, she's an annual visitor to the Who's Who in American Teachers list. I mean, my goodness, this is Parsons College, folks. This isn't New York City or Boston or Chicago. So I would tell you, this is an extremely special group here today, and my resume pales to what they have done, and I'm just so proud and honored myself to be joining this group and to be the bookend of a 10-year odyssey that has been simply fantastic. And I would tell you, we do hope that somebody elects to tap the brains and the minds of Dave and I to perhaps continue this forward, because I could see this family gathering every few years, and I would love to see it go forward. I love Parsons College, and I would tell you all, there's probably enough candidates out there. We could probably wallpaper this entire center with the success stories from Parsons College. There will always be a Parsons College.
We would like I'd like to extend an invitation to all who have registered to join us for lunch right here in the Fairfield Arts and Convention Center. If you were with us last night, we'll be in the same location, but just walk to the north when we give you the signal. This will happen immediately after we unveil the plaques out in Alumni Hall. I'll also remind you this afternoon at the Carnegie Library on South Court Street is going to be open right here in this theater following your meal, if you wish. Second in a series of documentaries about Fairfield. The heroes of Fairfield will be here. In the future, they're going to do a documentary about Parsons College. So if any of you are interested in sharing stories following the movie here this afternoon, there will be a place that you can visit on that. Evening meal will also be in the same location just north of the main lobby. Social hour at 5 instead of 5:30. I had a couple people say, only a half-hour social, so we moved it to 5 o'clock instead of 5:30 on that. Dinner will begin with a cash bar at 6 o'clock. Dr. Robert Tree, I understand you're in the audience. If you'd like to come to the stage, because we're going to have a group shot up here, we will do that, and we'd like to ask him to say a few words before we dismiss. So Dr. Tree, would you please come forward?
Thank you. As you may have noticed, some of you have known me for some time, I move a little more slowly now than I used to. But then I'm somewhat older than I used to be, and seem to be getting older all the time. It was a wonderful experience being here and seeing so many of you have returned for homecoming and kind of our last hurrah, at least for the time being, and to congratulate the several men and women who have been named to the Wall of Honor on this occasion. So it is wonderful to see all of you. I hope to see many more during the remainder of the occasion. And so rather than keep you from doing whatever it is you wish to do, I will say, good to see you here. Have a wonderful time, and hope you will return to Fairfield on various occasions when you're passing through. I have made it pretty much my home, as it has been for quite a few years. And I do have one final little item to tell you. A week or so ago, we had a luncheon at the library for retired teachers. And I guess I qualify for being a retired teacher. At any rate, I'm a member of the organization. I remember coming in and seeing the tables set up, and there was a table, a lady sitting at the end of it, and others and other tables and so forth. So I decided, well, I'd keep the young lady company. And as I was sitting down opposite her, she looked up at me and said, "Why, Dr. Tree, I had you back in 1956. How wonderful to see you again." And I need to tell one other thing for the faculty in particular. She said, "You know, since I graduated from Parsons College a year after I was in your class," she said, "I've taught at many schools, and I've attended a number of different colleges, taking work and so forth with them. But I must say, I think the faculty at Parsons College was still the best faculty that I encountered in all the several schools I have attended." And in my opinion, there was one bright student. Thank you very much. Have a good time.
How many of you have your programs with you? A few of you? Good. Because you're going to have the opportunity to stand And we're going to be able to sing the Parsons College alma mater as our closing, and then we will have a blessing and move forward. So at this time, if I could invite you to stand, grab your programs. And we'll ask our technician to start our alma mater for us. I will do a prayer for our meal and a blessing, and then I'll ask you to be seated until all of these folks have moved out to the Alumni Hall. Dear Lord, we like to thank you for all of your blessings on this gathering to remember our alma mater, Parsons College. We ask that you be with those gathered today as they return trip home. Never let us forget the opportunities and doors which were open for us during our time as students wearing Kelly green and white. Bless this food to our use and us to thy service. If you'll be seated for just a few minutes, we'll exit. And then those of you who are really hungry, you can head to the north. Those who want to stay for the unveiling, we will be in the Alumni Hall. Thank you very much for being part of this today.